So, in light of recent fairly horrific events, I wanted to talk about a book about a murderer, El Túnel, by Ernesto Sabato, which is a very good book. And before I get to the idea that I would like to express here with this video, I just want to read you the very first bit of this book, because I think it's quite relevant to some of the things happening in the world today. So I'm going to read the Spanish for each part and then translate it as I go. Bastará decir que soy Juan Pablo Castel, el pintor que mató a María Iribarne. It would be enough to say that I'm Juan Pablo Castel, the painter that murdered María Iribarne. Supongo que el proceso está en el recuerdo de todos y que no se necesitan mayores explicaciones sobre mi persona. I suppose that the process is in the memory of everyone, and that it is not needed, and that major explanations are not needed about who I am. Aunque ni el diablo sabe qué es lo que ha de recordar la gente, ni por qué. Although not even the devil knows what the people have remembered, nor why. En realidad, siempre he pensado que no hay memoria colectiva, lo que quizá sea una forma de defensa de la especie humana. In reality, I have always thought that there is no collective memory. What maybe is a form of defense for the human species. La frase, todo tiempo pasado fue mejor, no indica que antes sucederán menos cosas malas, sino que felizmente la gente las echa en el olvido. The phrase, everything was better in the past, does not indicate that before less bad things occurred, but rather, happily, the people have thrown them into oblivion. Desde luego, semejante frase no tiene validez universal. Yo, por ejemplo, me caracterizó por recordar preferentemente los hechos malos, y así casi podría decir que todo tiempo fue peor en el pasado, si no fuera porque el presente me parece tan horrible como el pasado. Since then, such a phrase does not have universal value. I, for example, characterize myself by remembering preferably the bad facts, and like this, I could almost say that all time in the past was worse, if it were not because the present seems to me so horrible as the past. Recuerdo tantas calamidades, tantos rostros cínicos y crueles, tantas malas acciones, que la memoria es para mí como la hermosa luz que alumbra un sordido museo de la vergüenza. Let's see, where was I as far as translating goes? I remember so many calamities, so many cynical faces and cruel, so many bad actions, that memory for me is like the scary light that illuminates a sordid museum of shame. ¿Cuántas veces he quedado aplastado durante horas en un rincón oscuro del taller? después de leer una noticia en la sección policial. Wait, let me go back. So many times I have remained plastered for hours, or glued, however you want to translate that, in a dark corner of the workshop after reading the news in the police section. Pero la verdad es que no siempre lo más vergonzoso de la raza humana parece allí. Hasta cierto punto, los criminales son gente más limpia, más inofensiva. Esta afirmación no la hago porque yo mismo haya matado a un ser humano. Es una honesta y profunda convicción. But the truth is not always as shameful as the human race that appears there. Is not always the most shameful thing of the human race that appears there. I'm not entirely sure how to translate that. Up to a certain point, criminals are more clean people, more inoffensive. This affirmation does not. I do not make because I myself may have murdered a human being. It is an honest and profound conviction. Un individuo es pernicioso, pues se lo liquida y se acabó. An individual is pernicious. Well, it is liquidated and it is done. Eso es lo que llamo una buena acción. That is what I call a good action. Piensen cuánto peor es para la sociedad que ese individuo siga destilando su veneno y que en vez de eliminarlo se quiera contrarrestar su acción recorriendo a anónimos, maldicencia y otros vejas semejantes. En lo que a mí se refiere, debo confesar que ahora lamento no haber aprovechado mejor el tiempo de mi libertad liquidando a 6 o 7 tipos que conozco. That is, oh wait, I read that part. You think how worse it is for society that individual continues distilling his venom, and that instead of eliminating it, it is wanted to counteract his action, resorting to anonymous letters and other such lows. In what I refer to myself as, in reference to me, I must confess that now I lament not having taken better advantage of my time and freedom, liquidating 6 or 7 guys that I know. Que el mundo es horrible, es una verdad que no necesita demostración. Bastaría un hecho para probarlo en todo caso, en un campo de concentración. Un ex pianista se quejó de hambre y entonces lo obligaron a comerse una rata, pero viva. How horrible is the world that such a truth does not need demonstration. It would be enough of a fact to test it in any case in a concentration camp. An ex-pianist complains of hunger, and then they force him to eat a mouse, but he lives. No es de eso. Sin embargo, de lo que quiero hablar ahora yo ya diré más adelante. Si hay ocasión, algo más sobre este asunto de la rata. It is not about that. but rather of what I want to talk about now. I will say more forward, or more later, however you want to read that. If there is an occasion, something more about this point of the mouse. So I am not the best translator. Translation is a difficult skill to do. It's more difficult than actually being able to read the thing that you're reading. And also my pronunciation is not the best. So my my memory literally ran out. So I had to transfer that clip over and then delete it in order to record this one. But basically what I wanted to say is that what we encounter here is a deeply cynical character, one that distorts reality in order to support his bleak worldview. A character that sees people as disposable, that sees people as potentially justifiable targets. And throughout the course of the book, which I will not spoil, you see these justifications continue to morph and change, and the overall absurdity of the book continues forward. But I think the perspective of this character is very pertinent when considering the situation that many young people find themselves in, where they believe that things like political violence, for example, could somehow be justified, and how the society that we exist in has alienated people to a point where they're so in their own head, so willing to distort reality because they do not live in it, that such evil acts could be portrayed in this manner. I look at that narration and I really feel like I'm hearing a lot of people that could be talking today, people that I have heard before, that thankfully didn't do anything, but talked in kind of this kind of way. And it's a deeply concerning thing, right? I think one of the reasons for engaging with literature is that it helps us understand the perspectives of people that we may not, be exposed to in our lives, or that, maybe we've just seen in the newspaper, or people, we've just had passing thoughts about. Literature helps us engage with the dark realities of the world in a much more direct way, challenging our own preconceptions and helping us make sense of the cruel and bizarre world that exists around us. And that is one of the things that I really like about that book. It is a challenging read. It's quite witty and funny, the way that he, in a sort of cynical and self-referential way, he describes his surroundings and environment, the context of his decisions. But also the humor that we derive from this book is in large part due to the absurdity of what's being said, of his justifications, of his deeply cynical worldview. And that makes it both an uncomfortable and an enjoyable experience to read. And moreover, the fact that I have the ability to read the book in its original Spanish form is something that I am deeply grateful for, because while I'm sure that I would also enjoy the English translation, there is nothing like getting to read the original version of the book exactly as the author intended. So that's what I want to leave you with today. Read more books. Literature is powerful. Literature is important. And let's try to fight back against the tide of cynicism, because it's quite concerning, some of the things that are happening these days.